All right, let's talk about men's mental health. And here's what I've realized after making men's mental health content. No one gives a rat's ass about men's mental health. In fact, I don't even think most men care about men's mental health. And I think that's the scary part. Like, yo, there is a swath of men that are literally suffering, searching for solutions, and no one is there to help them. No one offers any solutions. And, you know, honestly, most of the time, most guys that are going through things from a mental health perspective, I feel as though most of them don't even care to try and get some sort of help. And I'm not talking about therapy. We'll talk about therapy in a second. But most guys don't even want to try and solve the situation themselves. They kind of just want to, you know, wallow in their apathy. And I think this is the crux of the problem overall. I mean, just look at some of the statistics. Men are lonelier than ever. They're not dating. Some of them are still virgins in their early 30s, which isn't necessarily a problem. But when you're not doing the social milestones that people expect you to do or complete, it kind of puts you in a weird spot in life. But here's my theory. And in this video, I'm gonna show y'all 3 ways, maybe 4, 3 ways you can get over your depression or, you know, just helping with your mental health. Obviously, some of these are going to be pretty conventional. Some of these are things you probably already know, but I truthfully believe sometimes we do need to be reminded of the simple things, right? Now, let me go ahead and tell you my story. Some of you may know this story, some of you might not, but a couple of years ago, I almost took my own life, almost jumped in front of a train. Looking real grim for the boy. It was looking pretty bad. I mean, the way I was thinking about my life at that time was that I was inherently useless, right? I was having problems with my relationship with my parents, relationship with my friends, my job, my finances were fucked up. The only thing that kind of stopped me from actually doing it either sooner or before I had thought about doing it was the fact that I was relatively young. I mean, I was a couple years younger than what I am now. I mean, I was like my life about 6 years ago. So in that time, I've grown a lot and I've learned a lot of things. But one thing I've definitely learned is that men are alone when it comes to men's mental health. With all that being said, here are a couple things that helped me, and I want to share them with you in hopes that it helps you. And the first one is going to be exercise. Now, I know some of you are mainly focused on exercise for the physical aspects of it. I mean, obviously, that's kind of the world we live in, right? It's always the world that we've lived in. Humans are inherently shallow because we're predominantly visual. But I think with all things considered, bro, I don't know what the fuck that is. What is that, dude? Like I was saying, exercise. Exercise is going to be the best thing for you from a mental perspective. And the reason why I say that is because exercise inherently changes your brain. It changes your blood, it changes your heart, it changes everything within you, right? But more importantly, it changes how you think and how you perceive things. Now, is this an immediate fix? Obviously not. This has to become a part of your lifestyle, right? But at the end of the day, just moving is going to help you. It's going to help you think, it's going to give you that kind of clarity, and it's going to give you that assurance. Yo, fam, I don't know if we got wild animals out here, but fam, if I get attacked, it's a wrap. It gives you mental clarity and mental focus, right? But more importantly, it starts to set up the foundations you need internally. My fault, yo, if I keep turning around, but it sets up the internal foundations you need to build that resilience, right? Because obviously life isn't perfect, you know, life isn't easy, and I don't think anyone necessarily expects it to be that way, at least all the time. So being able to be headstrong and resilient is definitely going to help you when it comes to getting over your challenges and things of that nature. Now, here's the next thing. I'm not gonna lie, y'all, I think shrooms helped me out a little bit. Now, I'm not condemning or condoning. I'm not telling you to do shrooms, and YouTube, don't try and get my shit demonetized thinking I'm, you know, promoting the use of party favors. But what I'm saying here is, I think microdosing to some extent helped me. Now, there's tons of research on microdosing and the effects of it. I also wouldn't suggest ketamine, but apparently there are some ketamine studies out there which also show it improves mental health. But here's one thing I want you to consider. If you are willing to microdose, again, I'm not suggesting you do, but let's say you were to do this. My suggestion would be, if you are going to do it, take a small dose, obviously that's what a microdose is, and have a journal with you, which kind of is the third thing I would say helps with mental health. But having a journal with you while you're doing that, if you could write, I know sometimes depending on the dose you take, you might trip off into space, but depending on the dosage you take, you'll still have the ability to write, right? And I think those are the perfect moments when you're kind of like out of your body per se, more so having that third person perspective, just thinking about you as a human as opposed to you as the individual. That gives you like that outside perspective of being able to properly assess problems that you might have in your life. I mean, one thing we have to remember is that oftentimes when we have friends that are going through things, or when we have people that are going through their own challenges, we always tend to look at their situations objectively. But when it comes to our own personal problems, it's a little harder to do that because we're the person going through it. But I truthfully do believe to some extent that microdosing kind of helps you step out of that perspective and helps you better deal and assess situations. Now again, not condemning nor condoning. I'm not saying to go ahead and do this. I'm just saying it kind of helped me. Now, the next thing I was saying in conjunction to that is going to be journaling, right? I said this before in plenty of other videos that I've made. This isn't my first mental health video that I've made on the channel. Feel free to check out any one of these other ones depending on where it pops up. But journaling is especially important. And the reason why I say journaling is important is because at the end of the day, no one gives a fuck. Like, no one gives a fuck about how you feel. No one cares about your feelings. And the reality is we're all going through these things, right? I think journaling, whether it be digital or via notebook, is a great way to get your thoughts onto paper and better assess some of the things that you might be going through, or maybe you just have some pent up shit that you want to get down, you know? And that's the major downfall for a lot of us guys. Like, we think holding shit in helps us, but in the long run, it really doesn't. You just become this man who is just so caught up in anger and vitriol. You start to act in manners you normally wouldn't, right? In other words, like that quiet kid who's been going through some shit but doesn't tell anybody, and then one day just explodes. That's how a lot of people address their emotional issues. I understand as guys, it's important for us to, handle our feelings, responsibly and deal with them in a constructive manner. And by no means am I saying crash out. As a side note, young men, do not crash out for nothing. I'm telling you right now, don't crash out for no bitch. Don't crash out for none of your lame ass friends. Don't crash out for your family who be acting up and acting stupid. Don't crash out for nobody, because at the end of the day, the only person who's going to save your life is you. But again, with all those things considered, it's not conducive for you to go ahead and either act out of emotion or bottle it in. You have to find a way to constructively put those emotions out into the universe, the stratosphere, whatever you want to call it, in order for you to get better. And now, listen, just because you might have some mental challenges or whatever the case may be, doesn't necessarily mean that you're a fucked up individual. There's nothing wrong with you. Like a lot of times people are like, especially in these spaces, when they talk about, men that might be neurodivergent or something of the sort, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just going through challenges, my friend. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, if you could overcome these challenges, then you become a better individual. And now listen, I do to some extent believe that there are some things that don't necessarily need a silver lining. Man, sometimes I hate recording in the park because, there's always fucking animals. But no, for real, there are just some things in life that have no silver lining. And we have to accept that, especially as men. We have to accept that the reality is there are just some things we can't change. However, that's also liberating, because now that means you get to work in some of the parameters that you've discovered and have a potential to progress within those areas. Like, listen, just because you don't look like Jeremy Meeks or, the typical chatter Tyrone doesn't mean it's completely over for you. Can you change a lot? Not necessarily. I think there are some things you could really max out. But in the case of mental health, there are just some things you can't fix. Like, I can't bring my brothers back, so no amount of wishing that my brothers could come back from the afterlife will help me mentally. The best I can do is learn to deal with the emotions that I feel when I miss my brothers. And same goes for you in whatever challenge you might be facing. Obviously, there are some things that are a little more serious, like if you have some physical ailments that's also affecting your mental health, perhaps going to the doctor should help you out or could help you out. But all in all, we don't need to look for silver linings in things. We need to look for potential and possibility within our own situations that we can work with as opposed to work against. I am somewhat a fan of the black pill because what I really like, and here's just a nod to other creators as well, whether in this space or adjacent, I like how brutally honest a lot of you are. However, I think within that brutal honesty, sometimes there isn't necessarily a solution given. Again, there isn't always a silver lining, but I think giving some sort of not solution rather, but I guess some cope. That's a better way to
quick editor's note. When I say cope here, I don't necessarily mean like you have to live a lie or you have to live in some type of, false reality, whether that be internally in your head or, you try to construct some sort of false universe around you and the things that you want. When I say cope, I genuinely mean just either doing things that make you happy or just living with the fact that you may not be able to accomplish some of the things that you would expect to accomplish that you've seen other people accomplish. I hope that makes sense, but let me know your thoughts in the comments. Anyway, back to
That's a better way to say it. Everything we do in life is cope, gentlemen. So I think it's much better to try and cope than to just wallow in your own self-pity. Because at least the way I see things, in the grand scheme of things, it seems like society is just one big cope anyway. I mean, the reality is everything we do in this life is either to deny death or in preparation for it. So I really don't see the problem with guys having copes or whatever the case may be. Sometimes we need these things to get through life. I know at some point in my life I needed cope. For me, it was like going to the gym and, being artsy because that would probably attract artsy women. And honestly, what attracted artsy or just women in general was losing weight, at least in my case. That's how I, what do y'all call it? Ascension? That's how I ascended, right? But without making this super long, gentlemen, I do believe that within all of our lives, we could find moments of peace, solitude, love, fortune, luxury, and the list goes on and on. But they have to be created within your own parameters. Like seeing someone else's life on Instagram or whatever the case may be, and then comparing that to your life right now is only doing you a disservice. And I think when it comes to mental health, if you're not gonna go out of your way to at least try to cope with these things, and you decide to then, okay, let me just wallow in my self-pity and think that's gonna be the answer to solving this solution or this chronic problem that you have, it's not, fam. It's not. Honestly, you're much better off doing some sort of action, like, bro, going for a walk, going for a run, doing some push-ups, journaling, whatever the case may be. You're much better off doing something that will occupy, your hands and mind, as opposed to sitting there in your basement thinking that it's over for you. It might to some extent be over for you in certain areas of your life, but you can still find some things in your life that you enjoy and things that'll make your life worthwhile. That's what I'm thinking. You let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this one. Check out one of these other videos, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Peace. Oh yeah, go touch some grass today. I mean for real, not for the sake of being outside, but touch some grass, motherfucker. It's nice out here. Peace.